uses all these big fancy computer algorithms. He got his start just running baseball numbers in his basement, and he's now like has his own little organization within the New York Times. And so it's just because of this like data science that you can, for incredibly cheap and low cost, get huge amounts of information. And information which seems easy and straightforward to read. What's the problem with this? This is data mining. It's everywhere. You are being mined. If you want to know why it is that you get advertisements for what you get advertisements for, it's because you've been data mined. Where's the worries with data mining?
This can connect different data that like you don't even know about.
So here's one issue is, what unit are we in? What's subunit of? Okay, philosophy, ethics, and then we're in chapter 5, which was 6. No. 6 is security, right? The one with privacy, there we go. How many of you like your privacy? Raise them. Raise them. You care to some degree. Why did we say we care about privacy? What does privacy do to you? Yeah, it protects you. It keeps you safe. It allows you to make decisions yourself. How is data mining threatening privacy? Yeah, you now, if somebody has mined data, people are making predictions about you based on only one piece of data. This is public information. From that, they're making conclusions. Or another issue, say that you are fine with a certain company getting a certain piece of information about you. You might be fine if Target knows what you purchased. But if they start mining that data and mining everyone else's data, what sorts of things can Target find out about you? Clue, this was one for you. Yeah, if you're pregnant, how did Target find out whether people were pregnant? What's the full story? Does anyone who had the chance to read?
It's like their shopping record and everything. The guard is kind of like looking all this stuff in their internet and stuff.
Yeah, so it was just by looking at the computer record.
And the like baby registry?
So what they did is they first looked at, Target has a baby registry. So for people who want Target to send them ads or send them coupons for baby supplies, they have a registry so Target knows. But not everyone who's pregnant is on the baby registry. But what Target did is they took everyone on the baby registry and ran some data mining correlations. And they found things like people who are in their second trimester were far more likely to buy large amounts of unscented lotion. People in their third trimester were far more likely to start buying larger pocketbooks which could store diapers in them. And once they started having all this information, once they had this information, what could they then do? So they now got an idea of what sorts of things pregnant people purchase and when. Now what can they do with new customers?
They can send them coupon and like all this stuff.
So the first step is they can just now tell, they no longer have to see you on the baby registry to know that you're probably pregnant. Because they can look and see, oh, pregnant people usually buy unscented lotion and big bags. This lady's buying a lot of unscented lotion, big bags, and is 30 years old, so she's probably pregnant. Or at the very least, there's enough of a percentage that we're going to start sending her coupons to encourage her to come to Target before any of our competitors know she's pregnant. Because as soon as you have a baby, it's in the records and any company can know and start sending you stuff. Target's job of this data scientist they hired was to find out who was pregnant before anybody else found out, except for the person themselves, which sometimes included things like, why did this story become big? There was a 17-year-old girl who started getting ads for diapers and things like this. Her dad had a shit fit, went to Target and said, why are you trying to encourage my daughter to get pregnant? They were like, oh God, we're so sorry. They called back to apologize again, and he said, I'm very sorry, I need to apologize. There's a lot going on in my house that I didn't know about. My daughter's pregnant. Target knew before the dad because of this data mining.
That's quite amazing.
And if this makes you feel at all uncomfortable, Target discovered that what they did initially was just send people advertisements that said things like, congrats on your first child, would show up. How does this make you feel as somebody? Do you want Target, before you've announced to anyone else that you're pregnant, announcing that you're pregnant? No. So are you going to shop at Target? No.
Say no.
Target very quickly realized that this is a bad plan. So what did they do in response?
Just say sorry, I don't know.
No, they stopped sending obvious congrats on your babies. They kept sending the coupons. They just hid the coupons amongst other coupons.
Yep.
So that people would be like, oh, Target just doesn't know that I'm pregnant. These diapers are next to a lawnmower. They know nothing about me. When really what Target was doing was going, put the lawnmower there, then they'll have no idea we know they're pregnant. And what was the effect for Target? What happened? I'll give you a clue.
More sales.
Money.
They started making
More
more money.
revenue.
Targets had a major spike in their baby department. This is the power of this sort of data mining, is you can get information about people. And here's the other thing, is it's not like these people were telling Target anything they didn't want Target to have information about. Like, if you shop at Target, you assume they're gonna know your purchases and what time you're there. The difference is you don't know what they're doing with that data and what conclusions they can draw. And the fact is that there's this big difference between what you explicitly tell someone and then what's implicit in the data, what's hidden there. And what data mining is finding the stuff that's hidden there in the data, which you might not even know you're telling someone. And because of that, they can get information about you which you don't even know yourself. You might not realize that you're telling Target, I'm pregnant, but based on your purchases, you are. And then they can use that information and subtly get you to do what they want you to do without you realizing that they have any idea that what your state of affairs is. So everyone understand how that works. And it's kind of, for somebody who isn't in any way worried about privacy, it's pretty damn terrifying that these companies, and basically any company with a large data set can run a data mining experiment on you and learn things about you. So what was another big one that came out in the news in the past year plus?
Facebook.
Yeah, Facebook has huge amounts of data on you. And if somebody gets access to your Facebook data, they can learn so much. So specifically, what was the thing that was identified using Facebook data, which was then used by certain parties to do certain things?
Cambridge Analytica.
Yeah, Cambridge Analytica, which was a private company who was hired by who?
Some professor.
So a professor got the data, his information was then bought by this company. This company was then a consultant for who? Give you a clue.
For Trump.
There we go, the Trump campaign. And specifically, what was the Trump campaign able to identify from this?
Who's possibly voted for.
Who was on the fence based on Facebook data, and specifically, what sorts of messages these people on the fence would be more likely to respond to. And then, once you knew that, what could you do? If you know that somebody lives in Ohio, which is an important swing state, and you know that their number one concern is immigration,
You can go to Ohio and you're going to talk about immigration.
there you go. Or, even more simply, you just start flooding their Facebook messages or their Facebook walls with suggested news on immigration issues. And you start contacting all of their friends and saying similar things. And that's the way in which you can use this sort of data to subtly affect an election, is if you read many people get their news these days by Facebook. So if you send news, be it real or fake, of the type that somebody's looking for directly to their Facebook, based on knowledge you have gathered from their Facebook, you can change their views very straightforwardly. And it's very subtle, and here's the amazing thing, is if you're talking to 1 million people, you don't need to change all 1 million opinions. Every single one you change is one more voter. So even if you only change 1 out of 100 people, that's 1,000 people who are now voting your way.
I just think it's crazy, like, even though like times have changed significantly, they still like use this back then, like, because like I'm thinking about the election when JFK was nominated. It was based off of his charisma and his what they presented him as, not necessarily the actual qualities that he had to be president.
This is a great point, which is that in some ways, none of this stuff is new. It is all things which have happened before. So if you go back to that election between Nixon and Kennedy, that was one of the first elections in which televised debates were held. Do people know what JFK looked like, roughly? Do people remember what Richard Nixon looked like, roughly? Who was, basically from what you know, who was the more attractive gentleman? JFK. What they found was, for the people who watched the debate on television, JFK was judged the winner. For people who listened on the radio, Nixon was judged the winner. Just because this is how humans work. And you, like, the sad fact is, you are like this as well. You are a biological creature where if somebody is very attractive to you and they say something dumb, you're more likely to be willing to, like, brush it off. But if they're less attractive and annoying and say something dumb, you're gonna ignore them. So that's just like a fundamental fact about human beings. And you can exploit these facts. And also, here's another thing, just we are very emotional creatures. So if you catch us at a certain time, we haven't eaten in a few hours, or you say things to us in the right way that trigger our emotions, you can affect our opinions on things. So the difference is that Facebook does it without you ever leaving your home, without you ever telling anyone anything that you thought you were telling them, and without them having to directly contact you to know. Like, it used to be, if you wanted to know how I was voting, you either needed to know me personally or give me a phone call and ask. Now, if you were to go on my Facebook, and I actually ever used the damn thing, you would probably be able to tell which way I voted. But even that, like, I have not been on my Facebook in 3 years for precisely these reasons. But the fact is, my friends list is still there, and based on who my friends are and what their political leanings are probably posted as, you could probably guess which way I would vote in the next election, and which, like, Democratic or Republican candidate I would back in a primary. Like, this is the sort of thing where I no longer have to be an active participant, and that's the major difference. Same process, different scale, different mechanisms. What are some other worries about this? Let's go back to the terrorist example. On the one hand, we as a nation do not want somebody who is likely to set off a bomb coming into the nation. However, what is one worry of using data mining and scoring systems to make this decision? What is the worry?
Like, literally how?
Yeah, so here's the question. There's going to be human decisions being made. So if you're going to look at terrorist actions, what is one thing that a TSA algorithm is almost certainly going to take into account when it's deciding how likely someone is to be a terrorist? And remember, it's not causation, it's correlation. So what's one of the #1 things that somebody is going to probably plug in as being correlated with terrorism? Ethnicity. You are plugging into your program that if somebody is of a certain ethnicity, they are more likely to be a terrorist. Or, just as problematically, what nation they're coming from. Because if you look at the number of terrorist attacks in the United States, if you go from this direction of, is there an attack? If yes, then they were probably from this country, and this country. That's a correlation. The issue is that you're now going to start running it the other direction. So instead of just being like, there's a chance that this person's a terrorist because, say, people who have launched terrorist attacks in the United States are, I'm going to arbitrarily choose the country of Jordan. Say, you now know this person's from Jordan, they're going to be getting treated as a terrorist, or more likely to be a terrorist than somebody else. Are most of the people in Jordan terrorists? No, a tiny percentage. Probably no different depending on how you define terrorists, probably considerably fewer percentage-wise than America, where we have a lot more guns everywhere and we're shooting each other all the time. So if you think about that, we're now building into these algorithms that this person, because of where they're from, because that's strongly correlated, isn't being allowed in. And the thing is, when they actually, it's very hard to get numbers on this, but it looks like these algorithms, if it judges that someone's a likely terrorist, the chances that they're actually coming to America to cause terrorist damage, 1% maybe. Which means 99% of the people who get flagged are not terrorists. It's just the algorithm is saying that they are. So there's this worry of, if you're building these algorithms in, you're taking precautions and not giving people a chance to actually defend themselves or have anything about them as a person deciding. It's rather that, say that you're somebody who's, you know, here's something. You look at these numbers, let's go back here. These are averages. So let's go with a really rich one of 1005. Now imagine that a new So imagine you're somebody who's interested in helping the most people possible get better education. So you're the head of the education department and you want to improve a school district. Where of these areas probably have the worst school districts? Yeah, number 2, the lowest income. So if you are somebody who is building new schools or putting more money in, that's where you're going to want to funnel your money, because that's where it's going to help the most. But that doesn't mean, it could be the case that the poorest person in any of these area codes lives in 1005. It's possible because this is the average. There could be one person with $0 who lives here. And this person now, because of these general averages, isn't getting treated as an individual. Or, think about it this way, if you're a bank and you're giving out a loan to someone, what is the goal? What do you want them to be able to do? Pay you back. So if you're giving a loan out, which of these places are you most likely to deem somebody a good investment? Are you going to give it, which of these 5 area codes are you most going to look to give out loans? 4 and 5, because this is where the wealthiest people are, the most likely to pay you back. You might not pay back the person. You may not want to give the loan to this just by looking at the big data set. But what's the problem with this?
It might be a very honest,
Yeah, there's
hardworking.
almost a guarantee that somebody in this area is going to be a great candidate for a loan. And if you are that person and you are told, we're not giving you a loan, you live in 10003, how is that going to make you feel?
Discrimination.
Yeah, it's discrimination. And the thing is, though, based on bank loans and things, you can get away with a lot of this. So during the financial recession in 2008, a lot of people were not being given mortgages entirely based on where they were buying their houses. They went to the bank and said, we're looking to buy a house in this county in Ohio. The bank said, a lot of people are foreclosing there. You may have a perfect record. We're not giving you a loan. And the reasoning why was the bank decided it wasn't a good investment. And how did they decide it? Well, because they were drawing these big picture conclusions on the basis of big data. And the problem with big data is it misses the small person. And there are always outliers in the system. And there's something fundamentally flawed about like guilt by association.
So there's not a program that can find that out, like.
Well, here's the thing that it comes down to. There are programs. If you were a bank and all you cared about was having the happiest customers possible, what would you do when this person said, I'm a good investment? What would you do as a, yeah, you check and talk to them. What is a bank's job? Is their job to have the happiest customers in the world? No, what's a bank's job? Making money. What is a better investment for a bank? To make quick decisions on large scales at high speed, or make sure that every individual customer is a good bet? You do things quick and dirty. So there are ways of doing that. Yes, quick and dirty in this particular case. So yeah, if you're running the bank, you're not going to bother following up there because it's not worth your time and effort. Instead, you're just going to use this and say, all right, we're just going to, because say you're right 80% of the time. 80% of the time, it's still going to make you a lot of money, and you don't have to pay anyone to do any following up. It's just those 20% of the people are getting screwed by association. So that's the thing, and this is where you come in and you go, wait a second, do we need to reconsider how this is going on? Like, is this something we need to regulate more? Because there's literally, most of the time, what determines what they're allowed to do with your data? Like, when Facebook gets your data, what are they allowed to do with it? What determines what they're allowed to do with it?
Anything, they can allow anything.
They can do anything with it, and why? You agreed to it. Remember that thing when you first logged into Facebook that said, please sign our terms of service, and you scrolled down right to the bottom and hit OK? That was you saying you can do whatever we want with my data. That is why Facebook can sell your data. That is why Facebook apps have major security holes all over them, and any app that uses your Facebook data. And that's why Cambridge Analytica, the big thing with Cambridge Analytica was, it was basically, some people downloaded an app and they filled out a survey. And when they filled out the survey, the interesting thing is based on Facebook's terms of service, you not only gave this company access to your Facebook data, you gave it to all your friends' Facebook data. So that's how, with very small numbers, they were able to get huge amounts of data. They only needed to get, I mean, how many friends? Say the average person who uses Facebook has 100 friends, just because that makes my calculations easier. All you gotta do, you talk to 100 people, you've now got 10,000 pieces of data. And so, that's the way in which this can happen. And because the terms of service said, you can do whatever you want with my data, that's the way that it ended up happening. So here's the question. This is clearly an issue with privacy. We all like privacy, and we all agree that privacy needs to be protected and that this is a threat to it. So why is it that we don't see differences? Why is it that if we all know that if this technology exists and we all don't like it, why does it continue to exist, and why aren't people going to jail or companies getting broken up or anything like that? Why is it the way it is? There's a few issues here.
As you mentioned, we agreed to it, so there's really nothing we can do.
Yeah, so part of it is that there's no laws in place that stop Facebook from deciding what counts as private and what counts as not private. And so we agreed to it, which stands up in US court as you agreed to the terms of service, therefore you consented. And one issue with this is Facebook gonna spend its time explaining all of this to you? No, because why would Facebook want to do that, I guess is a simple way. Who benefits the most from the fact that this data is all on Facebook getting processed and sold? Facebook is. They have an interest in making sure that you are not more private than you are. And because we signed it, there's no legal case for it. No, you're gonna.
Yeah, that literally makes it not a crime.
Yeah, there's nothing legal in place to stop this. And so let's